Hello, my friends. Today, I would like to present to you two scenarios. The first, very metaphysical, and the second, based on science. Both addressing the same theme, yet coming from very different angles. After which you will have the opportunity to decide which scenario, if either, has merit. As we all know, the most common fear of any human is the fear of death. I've made many videos on this channel about death and how we can never really die. We just change form or energy. We are immortal beings, and what we refer to as death is only an alteration in frequency, like stepping out of an old suit and slipping into a brand new one. Okay, I would now like to propose what might seem like a very bizarre concept, and then suggest reasons why this might actually be the truth. The premise of this notion is based upon the assumption or deduction that we, may already be dead. Yeah. So now I'm going to invite you to consider this as a possibility based on my own and others' conclusions. So, starting with the more metaphysical approach, I initially want to bring up a couple of features that play into the understanding of how this phenomenon came about. The first is timelines. Okay, to summarize, a timeline can be both personal and collective. Your personal timeline is determined by your attitudes, your principles and beliefs, and those choices that you make every day. Within that, it is an undeniable fact that nothing in life has any real meaning other than the meaning we give it. So the same experience for two people can have a complete different meaning to each. You've heard of jumping timelines? This occurs all the time. We are constantly jumping from one timeline to another, usually without even noticing it. Jumping timelines is simply where the person, for one reason or another, has changed their outlook, which then affects their frequency, therefore their timeline. Additionally, there is everyone else's timeline coming together to create a collective global timeline of humanity, a set of shared beliefs, ideas, and moral attitudes which operate as a unifying force within society. These timelines are continuously splitting. As I said, personally determined through one's own individual belief structures and globally directed through the collective consciousness. So, in essence, we are constantly choosing our own timeline by aligning with certain principles and perspectives. Probably the most significant thing to understand here about timelines is that two people living together can be on different timelines. Let's say one in third density and one maybe in fifth density. These two, or even an entire group of people, can, for example, be in the same room or even sitting at the same table talking, while one is resonating a low frequency, maybe complaining about the world, and the other resonating in a higher frequency, perhaps grateful for every moment of life. These two are on their own divergent timelines, yet within the same collective timeline. The collective timeline consists of all individuals on the planet, like a buffet table filled with all sorts of foods, some alive, like raw fruits and vegetables, and some cooked, like grains or meat, each resonating its own frequency. The other feature of this concept is what we're all calling the Mandela effect. And you can probably find all sorts of theories and information about this phenomenon on the internet, how it came about and what it means. Well, in a nutshell, it's where a large group of people remember certain details about a fact or event differently than others remember the event. Where, for example, a line in a movie has seemingly altered from what it originally was. Lyrics of a song, a line in a book, or a brand of clothing or food, where the spelling of the name or the logo has suddenly changed, when hundreds, maybe thousands of people remember it a different way. Examples might be like the movie line that I remember being, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all?" And is now supposedly "Magic mirror on the wall." And when you attempt to look it up to validate your memory of it, you find information stating that it has always been that way. Except you and thousands of others know differently. Like Oscar Mayer versus Oscar Mayer. "Oh, I'd love to be an Oscar Mayer wiener, not an Oscar Mayer wiener." Oh, well. Or the Ford emblem with the curlicue on the F, where hundreds of Ford owners swear that it was not there before. Or the Monopoly man who used to have a monocle and now doesn't. Or the Fruit of the Loom logo that used to show the fruit spilling out of a cornucopia, and now it doesn't even have one. Or Jiffy peanut butter. Jiffy peanut butter suddenly became Jif. And Jiffy peanut butter supposedly never existed. What? Okay, let's get into this. I'll begin with the first, as I said, more abstract scenario, and then move on into the science. You may have heard many people lately, or maybe even yourself, wondering, why is it that something just seems a little bit off in the world? And it's hard to put an explanation to these feelings or even a description. It simply feels to many of us that the world isn't what it used to be. In fact, is in some cases not even making sense anymore. Now, for some, this has been happening for several years, since maybe 2012 or so. For others, more recent, maybe 2 or 3, 5 years or so. So, let me tell you a little story. But first, a quick reminder. The Earth we live on is a simulated world, an illusion. And the lives we are living are sort of a game or a movie created before we came into life. To make this game more challenging and exciting, this planet that we're on is owned and controlled by a group of negative ETs that most refer to as the reptilians, who have held humanity captive inside a matrix. Over thousands of years, these beings have manipulated mankind into fear, causing wars and man-made disasters through controlling everything from politics to the weather. Well, as you know, their most recent plan to control the masses began coming together a few years ago. When it was decided by these guys that through the news media, they would convince humans that they were in terrible danger by creating a false life or death scenario that would catapult the entire world into fear, and that through their terror of death, mankind would voluntarily shut itself away. Well, during this planned isolation, while the world was locked away, these controllers, through their highly advanced unearthly technology, were able to place a portion of mankind into a state of suspended animation, long enough to remove them from the planet that they knew as home and into a near-perfect replicated world that would be basically indistinguishable from their previous home. And over time, these oppressors would be able to make any, adjustments or tweaks that might become necessary. This is why, for many of us, nothing seems quite normal. And although hard to put a real cause or even to fully define it, only that something feels off or wrong somehow. Much of this is because this planet is a virtual world, a simulation. Yet I might point out here that so was the Earth that you lived on 10 or 20 or 50 years ago. That Earth was also a simulated virtual world, just not the same timeline that we're on now. And although we didn't ask to be in this replicated world, and it may not be quite the same or what we wish it was, but it is home for now, and our lives will continue. So, where are we really? Where is this simulated timeline that we all now supposedly live in? Well, I would like to suggest, for whatever it's worth, that this timeline resides in the afterlife realm, or the spirit side. And what we are now living is a version of our life review. This is why so many of us are experiencing deja vu, because we have already lived this entire life and are now, for all intents and purposes, dead. Of course, as you know, we can never really die. But this is why so many people feel like something has changed. Something is slightly different, off. This is because we have moved into another timeline of another artificial simulated world and are now reliving the life we just had before this reset all happened. So, the way I see it, hey, we might as well take advantage of this time to deal with any remaining karmic flaws that we might have left, or to learn from our past mistakes and choose a better path. So are we trapped here? And what about the ascension? The only thing that can trap you is the belief that you are trapped. It's only your mind that traps you. This is why the mind control these negative beings have used for centuries has been so successful. Yet even with their incredible technology, these controllers cannot take our souls. So the truth is, it really doesn't matter where we are, which realm or reality. We can create our own ascension timeline through releasing all fear. There are infinite simulated realities. This is simply the one we're currently in. So you might as well not spend any more energy worrying about archons snatching you up or whether to go to the light when you die, because you're already there and you're fine. Fear, just like death, is an illusion. Once you're actually able to truly accept this as fact, you are free. As each of us goes through this imposed life review, the way it's set up through revisiting various life events, not only through our own reactions and emotions, but through the reaction and feelings of the other, we can learn very quickly the importance of forgiveness, not only for others, but for ourselves. And with each revelation, our frequency begins to lift. And at the end of this evaluation process, ascension occurs. And we move directly into our preset reality. This means that if you originally came directly from God, the source of all, into a human incarnation, you will go back to source. If you're a starseed taking part in the immersion program, you will pop back onto your ship or planet and reawaken into your ET life. If you've come from another galaxy or universe, this is where you will return. We'll all go back home from wherever we came. So you wondered what death would be like? Well, wonder no more. Death is an illusion. It's just moving from one reality into another. And I would like to suggest that this is exactly what happened to some of us. We died, and we didn't even know it. Yet, frankly, this is pretty much always the case. Like, when a person is dying, to the one looking on, like a family member, it will appear to them as if their loved one is now dead. And this is because the body no longer has life in it. But the one dying never died. Their soul essence, just moved into a higher frequency realm, yet is now invisible to the person looking on. Okay, now let's start bringing the science into all this. The fact that you're already dead and you didn't even know it is explained through the quantum world and a scientific theory that I've previously brought up called the many worlds theory. This is where every decision you make and every possibility that could happen will happen, where the universe actually splits into countless parallel universes. So in this case, a program of quantum immortality was put into effect through creating a simulated timeline of the exact parallel reality and using it to project a portion of humanity into that world. So as each individual is the conscious observer of whatever reality they wake up into, that they see around them, that virtual reality is consolidated into a timeline. And of course, this is how it always works. Your attention or focus generates not only your environment, but the events in your life. This is why a soul never dies, because there are infinite parallel worlds for them to shift directly into, just moving from one timeline into the next. For example, in one timeline, you may be the victim of a fatal plane crash where your body dies. But in another parallel timeline, you didn't take that plane. So then the one who dies in the crash just moves into that other timeline where they did not die. During a human life, every moment creates alternate versions of reality somewhere. But you and others continue to exist wherever your consciousness is. Through manipulating the timelines, a virtual duplicate of this earth was created, and a section of mankind moved into it. So why does everything feel so off now? Because it is. Although a near-perfect replica of our former Earth, there are subtle differences and occasional glitches that leave individuals wondering how this could happen. Why does my car seem like it's not the same shade of blue it always was? Why is my sister all of a sudden a fanatic golfer, where before she didn't even like golf? Where did that restaurant go that we used to go to every Friday for dinner, and now there's no sign of it? And in fact, looks as if there was never even a building there. Why is my neighbor acting different? Why did a man I've never met before come up and talk to me like we're best friends, talking about the things we did, and I have no memory of even having met him before? Now, if death is an illusion or only a boundary that consciousness can sidestep, what does that mean for the hold that religion has always had on us? Maybe we actually don't necessarily need to be baptized and to follow all the rules of the church in order for our souls to be saved. We're not only alive in one timeline, but in infinite timelines, and don't need a savior to rescue us. It's up to us. We have the free will to make our lives anything we desire them to be. The infinite many worlds allows us to live any way we choose. Another thing that should be considered within this quantum immortality discussion is, as I mentioned, the Mandela effect. In one reality timeline, Nelson Mandela died in prison in the 1980s, and hundreds of people remember watching his funeral on TV with his wife walking alongside the casket. Of course, in the timeline we're in, now shows that Mandela was released from prison in 1990, and in later years became the first Black president of South Africa and didn't die until 2013. So what's with all these false memories? Or are they really not false, but just occurred in a different timeline? Why do these movie lines, logos, and even world events happen differently than we remember they did? These discrepancies could be glimpses into alternate reality timelines, demonstrating that we have shifted timelines without even realizing it. Okay, now for a further explanation, one of the most brilliant theories proposed over the past few years was from scientist Robert Lanza. You may remember me mentioning him before. Lanza tells us that rather than the universe creating life, it's actually life that creates the universe. You've heard me say that consciousness is primary and fundamental to all of life. Consciousness has been here since the beginning of everything. There would be nothing without it. Consciousness always comes first, before the creation of anything. First the thought, then the thing, the life. The human brain is a receiver and translator, picking up the signal of consciousness and converting it into all life experiences. Yet even when the brain and body die, that signal of consciousness does not disappear, but continues. Biocentrism says that life is that signal, yet doesn't need a body to continue. So death is an illusion, because life and consciousness does not end with the death of the body. Life is able to move between multiverses, even though the physical body cannot. When we leave one timeline, our awareness remains and just moves into another. So in a way, we've always been in the afterlife. You've probably heard a lot of near-deathers comment when they return to the body that life here now feels like a dream compared to what they experienced on the other side. So here's what we need to get out of all this. So many people will die never realizing that they are already inside the afterlife, the womb of creation. They may spend their entire existence waiting for the veil to be lifted, for some heavenly transition to occur, never understanding that the veil was only their physical brain. And this hopeful transition has already happened. You don't have to wait for death. It's already here. You don't have to have an NDE to wake up. You just have to start paying attention. Death isn't a door. It's a frequency shift from one reality into another. So the bottom line here is that you don't have to wait for death and the afterlife, because there's a really good chance that you're already in it. Life is a mirror of your soul. Death is not the end, but a gateway into immortality. Thanks for hanging out with me, guys. Hope to see you soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.